Okay, this is week 11. In week 14, your paper is due, so make sure you mark that on your calendar. There'll be a forum opening up where you can post your paper. If you have a paper that's completed early and you think it's ready and you want to submit it, I would appreciate it. That way I don't have 150 show up on one day. So, but I'm not going to proofread anything. Now, if you want me to look at it and give you a brief comment, I can do that. If you send it to me, I'll look at it and I'll just tell you if the formatting is correct and all the stylistic stuff is correct, but I'm not going to read and proof. If you want the entire paper read and proofed, send it to one of your peers or a family member that you think will be honest with you. Use Grammarly or whatever grammar check system you have. Use spell check to make sure I have at least a readable paper. Okay, let's start looking at week 14. And week 14, I mean not week 14, but chapter 14. We're going to carry on from where we looked at it on chapter 13 with the costs. And we could look at chapter 13 and see where we could minimize our costs, which is normally where we want to produce at. But it doesn't tell us if we're profitable or not. Chapter 14 is going to bring into play the revenues that are available, and we're going to do some math. So I think it was, let me go to, I had a posting from week 13, chapter 13. Let me get these weeks and chapters figured out. Make sure you have this slide or a copy of these formulas down to make sure you know what they are, because you will need them on the test and you'll need them on your homework. Now what's going to happen with chapter 14 is we're going to add a couple more equations to it, like revenue, total revenue is price times quantity, and marginal revenue, which is the change in total cost over the change in quantity, just like we saw with marginal cost. So let's talk about chapter 14. There's several things we're looking for here. We're starting off, we're going to look at a perfectly competitive market. In a perfectly competitive market, if we look at the characteristics of the market, and they'll talk about it in the chapter, one thing you have to look at are homogeneous products. They're basically the same products being offered as their competitor right down the street or across the road. So in a perfectly competitive firm, they don't believe they have any price controls. So that'll make this calculation and determination of the optimum level of production much easier than when we start looking at the monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. We're going to look at the marginal revenue and how it's related to total and average revenue. How does competitive firm determine the quantity of maximized profit? There's one thing that I'm gonna go over a million times, is we're gonna look for the point where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. MC is equal to MR. That's going to give us the decision point for a perfectly competitive firm, which is what we're looking at today, and it's going to give us the optimum level of production for monopolistic competition, oligopolies, and monopolies. It's just the way you interpret is a little different. We might have competitive firms shut down in the short run, exit the market in the long run. And what does market supply curve look like in the short run, in the long run? Now, here are the characteristics of a perfectly competitive market. There are many buyers and sellers. They're trading identical products or homogeneous products, and they can easily enter and exit the marketplace. It's not going to require a $2 billion outlay of capital to produce the product. It's easier, free entry and exit. There's also, in the perfectly competitive market, there's good information. You can get it through the government or through periodicals, trade magazines, and so forth, so you can learn about the market you're hoping to enter. And here's the formulas. I want you to pay attention to. Just add them to that list. Total revenue is price times quantity. Average revenue is total revenue divided by Q. That tells us how much revenue they receive for each unit they produce. You have marginal revenue that tells us what we receive for each additional unit. And for competitive markets, average revenue equals price and equals MR. So basically what they're telling us, in a perfectly competitive marketplace, let me bring up the whiteboard real quick. In a perfectly competitive market, there are many buyers and sellers in play. And we'll see something that looks like this. There's one curve, two curves, three curves. That's P and Q. And what I'm showing you now is the zero economic profit. We have, with a monopolistic, a perfectly competitive firm, there's a well-defined supply and demand curve. So we'll have a quantity at equilibrium and a price at equilibrium. And let's say this price is $1. This is actual. And this is seen by buyer. And it's seen by the seller. As far as the buyer is concerned, this is how they perceive the supply curve. And if the price is less than $1, they'll buy an infinite supply, or an infinite supply will be available. As seen by buyers, if they offer less than $1, they'll get zero. If they go above $1, they'll get an infinite supply. If they're at $1, they get an infinite supply. And the seller sees the demand curve like this. If they offer it for less than $1, it's infinite. If they offer it for $1, it's infinite. But if they raise the price above the dollar, It's zero. That's because there's so many buyers and sellers in the marketplace, they don't believe they have any control of pricing. If you go to an intersection like on exit 97, you'll see gas prices all about the same. Because they perceive that if they raise their price above what their neighbor raises it, that they'll sell nothing. As long as they're at the same price or lower, the consumer will come in. So they're not going to accept anything lower than what's on the price of the pump. But you can look at exit 97 in Johnson County and exit 95 in Johnson County. Both of them have a lot of gas stations. They're only 2 miles apart, but each one of them has different price points. If you want cheaper gas in Johnson County or along I-95, you definitely want to stop at exit 95 instead of 97 because it's cheaper at exit 95. But the same thing again, all the pricing is very similar because they believe that the consumer will make a choice based on the price of the gasoline. So when we go back to the PowerPoint, and we'll go through it step by step. Mari's apple orchard can produce up to 10 bushels of apples per year. And the current market price is $20 a bushel. They want us to calculate Mari Apple's total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue. And we can see the price is $20 for all of these products. So for total revenue, it's just P times Q. And we can multiply by 0, but we can't divide by 0. So just remember that because that was something we discussed in chapter 13 with average variable costs and a few others. But 0 times 20 is 20. There's 0 times 20 is 0. 1 and 20 is 20, and 40, 60, 80. And you can see the order remains constant because the price is fixed. And it's going to go from 0 to 200. Our average revenue per unit is the same thing because we're looking at TR divided by Q. And if total revenue is 120 and the quantity is 6, the answer is 20. If the total revenue is 200 and the quantity is 10, 200 divided by 10 is 20. So we can see it's constant from the beginning to the end. We can't say this. Notice this on the other one, because our average revenue is not going to be 20 at 0. I would look at that as probably just a blank. But marginal revenue is looking at the change in total revenue over the change in quantity. And you can see it's set up at intervals between the quantity. So for our first bushel of apples, we're going to receive $20. We previously had $0. 20 minus 0 is 20. 1 minus 0 is 1. And that equals 20. We can also look at the TR again. At second bushel of apples, 40 minus 20 over 2 minus 1 is 20 again. All the way down to the last or 10th bushel of apples. 200 minus 180 is 20 divided by 10 minus 9, which is 1. It gives us 20. So anytime you have a situation like in a perfectly competitive firm where there are many buyers and sellers and the price is fixed, that means your marginal revenue curve is perfectly elastic. We can see the marginal revenue on this is perfectly elastic if we were to graph it, because we'd have quantity from 0 to 10, and it doesn't matter what quantity we're at, our marginal revenue is 20. The only place we don't see the curve go to, we get $20 for the first bushel. We don't get $20 for the 0 bushel. Does that make sense? I hear no sounds. Is everybody okay with that so far?
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So it's kind of unrelated, so I'm sorry, but it says you record these, right? The lectures.
Yes.
Is there any way to like if I wanted to rewatch a lecture?
Should have been posted. I think all of them have been posted in the announcements. I usually post on Wednesdays. So yes, and if you don't see it, let me know. Send me an email and I'll forward it to you. I'll forward you the link.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So you're good on this total revenue, marginal revenue, average revenue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like we talked about before, if you're not there, if you go into business and you're not there to make a profit, that means you're a nonprofit. You need to file all the government paperwork so you can become a nonprofit. But if your livelihood depends on it, yeah, you want to be uh, a good neighbor and everything, but it's still dollars and cents. So the goal of the firm is to maximize profit, where total revenue minus total cost. We want our total revenue to increase. We want our total cost to decrease. In either case, that means we're making more money. Okay. Now, what I showed you on the whiteboard, we consider that the concept of price takers. They take the market price. It doesn't matter if it's buyers or sellers, etc. We want to know what Q or what quantity maximizes our revenue. So we're going to look for the point where MC is equal to MR. If MR is greater than MC, then Q, if you increase quantity, you'll raise profit. If MR is less than MC, then we need to decrease our production to raise profit. And we maximize where Q is equal to MC is equal to MR. That is what we're looking for on these graphs. Go back to this one. We can see in this case they've included our cost as well. So this is for a perfectly competitive firm. We'll go through it step by step. We can see that the profit is total revenue minus total cost. That's the formula they just gave us. If our cost is 6 and we make no money, our profit is -6. At 1, it's 14. So 20 minus 14 is 6. The next profit level is 12, 24, 30, 24. 44, and then we just continue down all the way until we get to the last one. So we see 6, 16, 24, 4, 30, 34, 35, 35, 20, 34, 30, and 26. We can see that our profit is increasing all the way to this point right here. At that point, we should see where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. The marginal revenue is given because it is equal to price. Our marginal cost is the change in total cost over the change in quantity. We saw this in the previous chapter. So if our total cost is 14 at 1 and 6 at 0, the difference is 8. And we can continue that all the way down. As long as the intervals are at 1, we can divide by 1. If this is 0, 2, 4, 6, we're going to divide by 2. If this is 0, 3, 6, 9, we're going to divide by 3. If it's in tens, you'll divide by 10. So if it goes 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. Now, here we see, in this area, we see marginal cost is less than marginal revenue. Okay? Below that point, we have a situation where marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. So if our marginal cost per unit is 22 and our marginal revenue is 20, we're losing $2 a unit. That's not where we want to be. We don't want to be at 24, 26. We don't want to be at 14, 16, or 19. The place we want to be is here. Because if we look at the marginal revenue minus marginal cost, this is the point where we are 0. But it's easier to just remember that when MC is equal to MR, that's where we want to produce. Here they're going to give us a marginal cost curve and a marginal revenue curve. At Q of A, we can see clearly that the marginal cost is less than the marginal revenue. So our total revenue is still increasing as we move from left to right. If we move further to the right along the x-axis to Q of B, we can clearly see that we have a loss between this point and this point. So it won't let me draw on that one, but that's okay. We will see one case where we're below, then we get to the equilibrium, which will be at the point where MC is equal to MR, which will be Q of 1. At that point, if we subtracted marginal revenue and marginal cost, we would get 0 because they are equal. If it's below, we got revenue that we need to get. If we're over here, we need to get back to that equilibrium. Now, if we're at Q of 1 and we move quantity down, our profit's going to go down. Go here, our profit's going to go down. This is our optimum level of production. And the rule of profit maximization is MR is equal to MC. They said they're going to pound this into our brains. That's what we want to fund. That's going to tell us what quantity to produce. It's not telling us the price because the price is already set. If the price rises, that means this marginal revenue curve goes upward. Now our quantity to maximize our revenue is now shifted as well. We see the movement along the marginal cost curve, but not the movement of the marginal cost curve. The only curve that moved is marginal revenue. And in that case, we'll see the price go up and the quantity go up at the same time. This is not unlike if we go back to the supply curve. They're telling us what they'll sell it for. And if we're willing to pay more, they'll make more. So, like we looked at the previous slide, we're looking for MC and MR, and we move from Q1 to Q2 based on the shifting of pricing. Therefore, this is the firm supply curve. Now, we don't label it as supply, but it tells us the same thing, what they're willing to sell the product for. We have firms that are willing to sell it at a lower price. But if we increase the price, we see additional people entering the marketplace to take advantage of that increase in pricing. So we'll see movement up this curve with the increase in quantity. And the focus is to get to that point where MR is equal to MC. Now, in the short run decisions, not to produce anything because of market conditions, the quantity is zero in the short run. Exit, long run decision to leave the marketplace. If you shut down in the short run, you must still pay your fixed costs. And in the long run, you have zero cost, except for any debts that you incurred as a business. We're seeing a lot of this now with the COVID shutdowns. A lot of these businesses made short-term decisions just to go to minimum hours or lay the staff off, etc. But their capital can't last forever. As long as if they have no fixed costs, they have options. If they do have fixed costs that have to be paid, like payment for equipment and machines and security and everything else, they can't last to infinity. And the longer it takes to recover or get back to your previous condition where you can open the doors for everyone without restriction, you may go from a short run shutdown to a long run decision of closing the business. So this is something that's really current as far as what's going on in our economy right now. Now, if we look at should a firm shut down or remain open, there's a lot of variables in play here. One, is it a mature company? One, is it a new company? Is it a new product? Is it a new service? If we start a new business, let's say it's a car detailing business, we start off, we don't get a lot of clientele. But the clientele we do get, we make sure that we do an A1 job for them where, yeah, they're proud enough of what you did to show it to other people. When you start off, your expenses are going to be high because you're doing the initial purchase of all the chemicals, equipment, and the rentals, the whole 9 yards. But you don't want to shut down just because you're not making any profit. Profit's going to come once those individuals go out and talk to other individuals and you get that cycle started. So in the long run, you expect that the cost to go down, the marginal cost to go down, and hopefully at some point with increased demand, the price would go up. So if the total revenue goes up and the total cost is going downward, you hope they're going to invert at some point where the TR is going to be greater, and that's where you're going to maximize your profitability. So not everybody that's unprofitable should shut down. They say if P is greater than ATC, then the firm produces Q where P is equal to MC. P is less than ABC, then the firm shuts down, produces Q of 0. When we start a business, a lot of those initial investments that we make are going to be considered sunk costs. You'll never recover the cost that you put in, the value you put into it to start with. I used to rebuild a lot of bikes, Harleys and stuff, and I have individuals come in, they want custom paint jobs and chrome from one end to the other. And they put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 into a Harley that they already paid $30,000 for. And then when they got ready to sell it, they were thinking they were going to get $70,000 for it, the 30 plus the 40. And I had to explain to them, all this customization you did is sunk cost. That was for you. The other customer is not required to pay that. Now, if they like it, they may pay, but the majority of people are not going to pay that price because it was made for you, not them. That would be sunk cost. Same thing as if you bought a car and then you put a custom paint job on it and you have fancy rims and wheels and so forth. Yeah, it could add some value, but the majority of the value is going to be lost. So in the short run, fixed costs are sunk costs. That means you're paying them. You're obligated to pay them, and unless you shut down, you're still going to have to cut those checks or transfer those funds. Now, here they talk about while attending a concert, you pay $30, $35 for a hoodie, your favorite artist, but you bought it 2 sizes too small. So you decide to sell it. You had to pay $10 for delivery and mail. What is the lowest price you're willing to ask for the hoodie? Now, the individual buying it is not going to pay $35, any more than $35, because that's the price of a new one. And they're probably not going to be willing to pay $35 at all because of the simple fact it is no longer new. The $10 you have to pay by mail, if the price is $35, they're not willing to pay that. Now, I question the new cost because, it is no longer new. To affirm exit or enter in the long run, if the cost of existing market revenue loss is equal to TR and the benefit of exiting the market. We'll see this more clearly when we start getting into the other types of markets, the oligopoly, monopoly, and monopolist competition. Now, a firm in a perfectly competitive market, they exit the market if TR is less than TC. but not all the time. Like I said, you may be just starting a business, and your TR and TC will be inverted where you're going to have all that initial cost, which will be sunk cost, but over time you intend to, get more customers and attain additional revenue. You enter the market if TR is greater than TC. Same thing. Look at the type of business. Has this business been around for 10,000 years? Is it a mature business? Let's say you're a TV repair person. That's not a new business. And most stuff, as far as TVs are concerned today, is remove and replace. They're disposable. Competitive firms' long-run supply curve. When we were talking about the marginal cost represents their supply. So if P is greater than ATC, then the firm produces Q. You can see that. Cost will be there. If P is greater than ATC, the firm will exit in the long run. Here we're seeing profits, MR, there's MC, but what this is also showing us is the distance between these 2 points. And that's our profit, because this is our average cost per unit at this quantity. So if we're selling it at $5 a unit, or if we're selling at $20 a unit and the average total cost is $15, our total revenue, our total cost is going to be 15 times 7. So 75. So if we look at this, price minus average total cost times quantity, that's going to give us our revenue. It's 140, 105, it's 35. Revenue there, total cost is here. Average total cost is 15 times 7. Total revenue is 20 times 7. Now, if we're in a situation like we see here, in this situation, we now are showing this as a loss because our ATC is here, and this is our optimum level of production. That's where it's just like we looked at with supply and demand equilibrium. But here we have the marginal revenue is fixed at 3, but based on our calculation of average total cost, our average total cost is 5 at 30, which is the quantity where MC is equal to MR. Because remember, just like this is the point we're looking for. Where MC is equal to MR. And then we go down to determine the quantity, and then we go right back up to determine the price. The cost. So the average cost is 5, price is 3, we're losing money. Now, if we're a new business, we want to bring these costs down. There is a learning curve, and over a period of time, we want to bring this marginal revenue up. All logistic firms and potential entrants have the identical cost curves. These are assumptions. It's not necessarily true because of the available capital, who's got the greatest investment in equipment, uh, have they converted to an electric car, they have a delivery service, have they switched over to electric vehicles or low vehicles, uh, whereas another firm is still using minivans and pickup trucks. So every business's cost structure is not the same. But for this example, we're saying they are. Each firm's costs do not change as their firm enters and exits the market. That's the same assumption. The number of firms in the market is fixed in the short run due to fixed costs and variable in the long run due to free entry and exit. I think I gave you the example of the hot dog stand, and I didn't want any debt, so I paid it off within a month. Where my competitor waited, they said, I just want to make minimal payments. So they carry it over for an entire year or 2 years or 4 years or whatever. Their fixed cost is going to remain as long as they owe money on that car. The company that has the least amount of fixed costs or no fixed costs at all, which makes me in the long run, it increases flexibility, what I can do, what I cannot do. That's money I don't have tied up or guaranteed that I have to pay every single month. And if I shut down, it costs me nothing. As long as P is greater than or equal to ATC, each firm will produce its profit. So that is the same point where MR is equal to MC. They take us back to chapter 4. Market quantity supplied is the sum of the quantities supplied by all firms. That goes back to that same assumption that if we have a market supply or market demand curve, that's an assumption that everybody's the same, and the companies that are the same, they're willing to sell is the same. The market supply is the sum of all individual supplies. Now we do have to remember that along the supply curve, we have different costs that determine whether we're going to enter or exit the marketplace. If, let's say, they're looking at P1, there's only a few sellers willing to provide there. But as we move up this curve, we have more and more sellers entering the marketplace because their their average total cost is now equal to the price that's being given. So it's zero economic profit. They're willing to sell for that. If we have one firm, it's going to look like this. But if we're looking at a market, it's going to be more like this. You see it becomes more elastic. Okay? Long run, a number of firms can change due to entry and exit. That's what we hope occurs. And that's based on the law of zero economic profit. Let's see if they can show us a graph. I'm going to bring up the whiteboard again. Get that out of the way. We're going to look at zero economic profit. Okay, come on. I'm writing with the wrong pen. I'm going to have two graphs side by side. It's units of dollars, quantity, P and Q. If we have a business in the marketplace and we have a well-defined supply and demand curve, or if this is the market supply and demand, there's a quantity equilibrium and a price at equilibrium. If we look at this graph, in a perfectly competitive market, P is equal to MR. Price is equal to MR. Now, if we have a situation where this is our ATC, and let's say this is our marginal cost curve. If there's this scenario, we have an area from here going down to this quantity. That's going to be our market quantity. But we can see there's profitability in there. So we like that. Now, as I talk about, there's easy entry and exit. And there's 4 rules to this. Typical firm is profitable. Two, if you're profitable, it attracts new firms. Three, increase in supply leads to a decrease in price. And 4, will continue until P is equal to ATC. So what we're seeing here based on the rules, we're going to see additional firms in the marketplace, which is going to increase the supply in the marketplace. Now, this is going to change the equilibrium. Let's go to here. And here. So the price is going down and quantity is increasing. Now what happens is our price changes. So now our price is here. Well, let's see this point right here, where P is equal to ATC. That's zero economic profit in a perfectly competitive marketplace. Now, individuals that have capital available to them, individuals or companies that have included all their costs, including their own salaries and expenses, into the calculation of average total cost, will be okay at zero. Now, I may start a business, a cleaning service, and I use older vehicles. They're good, clean, reliable vehicles, but they're not brand new. Whereas my competitor wants to go buy brand new everything. So they've got about 20,000 more in each vehicle, and they've got fixed costs in each vehicle that they're making the payments on. They're going to reach the point where price is equal to C much quicker than I will. And by the time I reach that point, they are probably already gone, and I'm buying their used vehicles from them. So this is zero economic profit in a perfectly competitive marketplace. This cycle continues constantly. As that firm, my competitors leave, I'll see the supply go down, my price goes up, and profit goes up as well. So hence, in the long run, P is equal to minimum ATC. And I'm good with that as long as you're including all your true costs into the equation. If you're living out of the cash register or the till or the company debit card, we're in trouble. Well, not we, you are. And the only person to blame when you don't succeed is you. Now here they're showing one firm where the marginal cost, remember that's our supply curve. And here we have the long run average total cost. And we want to produce at the minimum point. So the long run supply is going to be perfectly elastic in line with this point right here, which continues on. Economic profit is zero, accounting profit is positive. Here we're showing scenarios with changes that occur, our marginal revenue going upward. Reaches the prices of the graph identify the profit maximizing quantities. Okay, so M1 is going to be 5, 2 is 10, 3 is 15, 4 is 20, 5 is 25. If the firm is making a profit or loss, all the way to here, they're making a profit. Let's see. All these are losing money. So 1, 2, and 3. 4 is 0, so they can survive. P is profit. So this is just going through each one of those points. Here we're looking at this is what I was showing you on the whiteboard. They've got it all put together. They don't show it step by step. But here we have the supply curve moving right. It'll go downward. Now here they show a demand increase to follow to bring it back to the profitability. That's nice. If you're just starting a business and you haven't got the clientele yet, you want that demand to come in, like starting the car wash business. If you wanted to, your best salesperson is your customer. Deliver a product to them that they're excited about, and they will tell others. It doesn't matter if you're in the restaurant business, an attorney, a CPA, it doesn't matter. Your customers are your best advertisement. And they could also be your death knell too. If you deliver poor products, you don't respond to questions, etc., they can also kill you on social media. Any questions about this zero economic profit? Here they're showing the demand curve. Increase demand in the short run, long run. Now this is long run supply. That shows the price. There's a quantity in the marketplace. Here we are in the firm. As long as it's equal, the marginal cost is equal, we are good. Here we're showing a slight profit. We see an increase in demand, which drives the price up. If we create a new product, nobody knows that they need it. Very similar with Bill Gates when he came up with MS-DOS. my first computer, I had to, you had to learn BASIC and DOS to even get it to turn on and function and even tell time. Uh, Now everybody can even perceive not having a computer or a smartphone in their possession. But nobody knew they wanted it until it was presented in the marketplace. Now their cost structure was high because they had put a lot of time and energy in producing this product. Where interfaces between the computer and the traditional, non-traditional user, which would have been the general public at the time. And it wasn't until 90s, the late 90s, that we found out everybody wanted one. Everybody needed one. And that's where the customers start coming in, is you put the product out there, and if they decide that that's something they have to have, they will drive the price up themselves. The marginal revenue will move upward with the increase in demand. The graphical user interface that's used by Apple today, I think it was Xerox that came up with it back in the late 70s, 80s, and they sold it to Microsoft. And the executive said, who is ever going to use this? That executive probably is retired and long gone by now. But they didn't have the foresight. They didn't know what was going to happen. But neither did Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. It's like with Zuckerberg. He just wanted to set up a dating app. And now he's a multi-billionaire with Facebook. Increase in demand in the short run and long run. If we see an increase in demand here, when products induce increased supply increases and the price falls. So just remember what I said about the zero economic problems. When new firms enter the marketplace, the supply is going to increase into the market, but it's going to bring the price down as well. Now, the long run supply curve is horizontal if all firms have identical costs, and we've talked about that. That's not going to happen. And costs do not change as other firms enter an extra market. That's not normal either. Long run supply curve might slope upward if firms have different costs. That's the reason we have a positively sloped supply curve and a marginal cost curve. Or cost rises, the firm enter the marketplace. The marginal revenue is perfectly elastic in this marketplace in a perfectly competitive firm, but the supply is not. They all have different costs. We've talked about it. Now, the costs rise when firms enter the marketplace, because we may need to expand. You know, if we're a machine shop, and we've been the only machine shop in this town for 30 years, we're not buying that high-tech equipment because we have no competition. But once that competition enters in the workplace and they can deliver at lower cost per unit, we're going to have to adjust. There's the MCMR again. Remember it. And the equilibrium is where P is equal to 8 MC. That's in a perfectly competitive firm. We went to Walmart to get cat food. Can't believe the store stays open all night. There's 10 shoppers in the store and only one checkout lane is open. Doesn't make any sense. Why do you think Walmart is open? When we look at Walmart, they're already stocking all night. And if they can generate any revenues, and the revenues exceed the cost of putting one cashier up front, go for it. There are people that do go out there at night. You may only have seen 10, but if each individual spent, $200, $300, $400, and you had other individuals coming as you left, it could be uh, cost effective to take care of those consumers. Now, the rent, equipment, fixtures, salaries, and management, they're all constant. They are fixed costs. They do not change. If Walmart had 10 customers during its daytime hours, do you think it would continue to operate? No. But at night, while they're restocking, the answer would be yes, because it's got to be open and the lights have to be on, etc., for restocking. Here are some of the things you may want to print out for this chapter. It covers the material, the questions that we were asked at the very beginning. Any questions? Any questions at all?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm still grading. Everybody in here, I think, majority of you should already have a grade for your peer review. If you don't, you need to let me know. I did see a couple of people that posted, but it doesn't look like they made comments on any other papers. You need to go ahead and make comments. As long as you can get in there before Friday, I'll give you credit for it. Okay? Just remember, in week 14, the paper is due. We want to make sure everybody is ready to submit their papers on time. And if you do have a chance to submit it early, that will help me. And usually it helps as far as grading is concerned. I'll just put it that way. Okay? Because I'm appreciative that I don't get them all on week 14.